So yeah, I wanted to open it up to questions from our audience. I'm going to shy away from like the really technical ones though, about martial arts specifically, because I'd rather focus on sort of the cultural thing as well. So if anyone's got any questions, they can unmute themselves now and ask a question if they want to. So does anybody want to step up and ask anything to our panel?
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
Richard,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. Yeah, hi, how you doing? Yeah, I'm loving this all the guys' stories and everything. One of the things that I was kind of like thought you guys might bring up, or one of the martial artists I thought you guys might bring up in regards to the cultural impacts that it had on Black culture, is a martial artist that never gets spoken about. Carl Scott. You guys know anything about Carl Scott?
Yeah, Sun Dragon.
Pardon?
Is it Sun Dragon? The film Sun Dragon?
Yeah. But like
Carl Scott.
Yeah, but I think that's like one of my favorite films, just for the simple fact that it's got like you know, a black guy that I was able. Okay, don't finish it. Don't worry. Sorry, that's my son. There was a black guy in the lead, you know, who didn't end up say like Jim Kelly in Enter the Dragon getting killed, or wasn't the sidekick. But then you know, and it was almost like someone that then showed me that I was able to go into a dojo and then learn martial arts as well. So I just wanted to put it out there, like that was one of the characters that made me want to take up martial arts as well. I didn't have to want to be like, you know, my fellow Chinese friend, or you know, or anything like that. But yeah, I just wanted to put it out there. Sorry.
And yeah, I would agree. Carl Scott, when we saw Carl Scott in a proper martial arts film, Sun Dragon, that was a bad boy movie, as I would say. That really, I remember getting excited over that as well, and that was really fantastic to see a black guy in not sort of you know, not an American martial arts film, but it was actually a Hong Kong Chinese martial arts film. To see him in that. But I think for me, it was a bit later that I saw Carl Scott in Sun Dragon. It wasn't right at the beginning. Another person that people have forgotten about is Ron Van Cleef. Ron Van Cleef as well, who was big as well in the martial arts world. They made a couple of films as well. So may have even known Ron Van Cleef before Jim Kelly. But just that Jim Kelly blew up because he was Into the Dragon. He started in a much bigger more westernized sort of a film. But yeah, Ron Van Cleef, and then Carl Scott, and then
Van Cleef. He was also doing a lot of choreography and did the choreography for some of the fight scenes in The Last Dragon as well. So he was big.
It was absolutely. I made a film about Bruce Lee. I can't remember. Trying to remember what the name was. So some sort of revenge thing for Bruce Lee, Black Dragon, something. Black Dragon revenge Bruce Lee or something like that.
It always had Lee in the title for some for obvious reasons.
So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks for that, Richard. Thanks for that question. It's always interesting because I don't know that much about because it's before I was born, to be honest, because I was born in 1980, so some of the stuff was before I was born, so I don't know that much about it, unfortunately. But this is why we have guys like Marlon and here to help us with that. So, question from Hong: what's your view on films like The Matrix? Because that was an entry point into martial arts movies for a lot of people in the noughties.
Andrew.
Andrew.
I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, there's quite an interesting point as well. So you had Yuan Ping working on The Matrix, and I think Corey Ewan worked on the Charlie's Angels, first Charlie's Angels film. Is that right? Yeah. But you did start to, it was when this was, they did it in The Matrix. Oh, I know Kung Fu, and they kind of made a thing about it. I mean, I have more of a problem with the fact that The Matrix is basically a rip-off of Ghost in the Shell than I do with the fact that I put some martial arts in it. But I do enjoy The Matrix. I didn't enjoy the sequels, but I did enjoy the original Matrix. And it was, you could see that it was choreographed. I think that's the point. You could see it was actually properly choreographed by someone from Hong Kong who, really knows how to make it look good on film, and I think that's why it didn't get a lot of people in there. So it seems like quite a positive thing. What do you guys think?
I love The Matrix. I mean, Morpheus is an amazing character.
Exactly. Classic.
He's just the boss, you know. And yeah, that was an entry point for me as well. It's a big spectacle on the big screen, so definitely.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? It's like, I know I accept that Matrix is a really good, like, I love The Matrix as well, but the Kung Fu isn't that good because the actors aren't action actors. You know what I mean?
But at that time, there was a whole explosion, I think, of choreographers, especially you know, Chinese or Hong Kong, John Woo and all those guys. Because you also had what's the one with John Travolta and Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage.
Face Off.
Face Off. Face Off and all this.
There was a lot going on then, because you had that, and then John Woo went on the second Mission Impossible film. You had, I mean, Crouching Tiger was a bit of an American co-production. You had Jet Li starting to make an impact with American films. Most of them weren't great. Interesting that, you know, we're talking about the black audience that he was going before. It's Romeo Must Die. You know, it's actually kind of
I worked on that film. Romeo Must Die with Jet Li. I did a big premiere screening or exclusive screening of that at Cineworld in Wood Green. Absolutely jam-packed, sold out. Martial arts and hip hop, DMX. You couldn't ask for no more than that.
You know, but and then, you know, and all the Jet Li films had Corey Ewan doing his choreography as well. So there's an interesting point to the late 90s, early noughties that there was a
and again, for me to actually see proper, you know, because before we was getting all that funny martial arts, and you know, I was be looking at it and saying, what the hell is that? You know, they chopping someone, you know, chopping in their neck, it's like they're dying. I said, what the hell? It's a chop. They're not going to kill no one with that. And then when all these guys, you know, Wu Ping, John Woo, and all these other guys started to actually do the choreography for these films, it just became a lot better. You started, you know, even though The Matrix, as you say, but because it was the actors, but it looked good. It still looked good, and
definitely.
It just was. There was a whole change, you know, seesaw change from what we used to see before that, which was terrible martial arts.
It's funny because I guess they kind of ticked a lot of boxes because Keanu's part Asian, Morpheus obviously, Lawrence Fishburne, Trinity, Carrie-Anne Moss as well is also a very strong character in the film as well. So you kind of got strong.
That track, we've got to mention Ghost Dog. I mean, I know it's not a Kung Fu specifically, it's samurai, but
that's another film I
have to mention Ghost Dog and Blade as well.
Classics. I mean, Wesley Snipes as well, very strong ended up becoming a very strong martial artist, didn't he, Wesley Snipes?
Yeah. But he was another one in those days as well who brought the whole martial arts thing as well onto the big screen. We loved that as well. Loved Wesley Snipes in Blade. I mean, in Blade, the first couple were great. I thought so. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And I just saw a comment about the Wu-Tang Clan. It's something we weren't able to touch on that much because we were there's so much to go through, you know. And I know, like, Andrew's a big fan of hip hop, so am I. I don't know, because I grew up with a lot of black friends as well, so they come over to my house to watch films, and then I borrow all their albums. So it was kind of a big crossover in culture for us. But you know, Wu-Tang. You know, some people don't know that they took their name from the film Wu-Tang versus Shaolin, wasn't it? Even their rapper names are taken from the characters.
All is for martial arts, a lot of it is for the martial arts. So they used to sit and watch kung fu films, as we know, similar to myself, and I've seen a couple of documentaries on the whole Wu-Tang Clan because we actually did. As I said, we worked on re-release of a label called Soul Connection, and it was a lot of the Wu-Tang Clan films, and they would introduce the film before it started, and you'd have RZA and other guys talking about their connection and how they got their names, and they would actually be reenacting a couple of scenes and stuff, but then it would go into the film. So I kind of got to learn their sort of whole story of how they were connected to the martial arts sort of world.
Okay, so we got a question from Joyce. What is the panel's reaction with Tarantino's take on Bruce Lee and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? Okay, anyone want to go for that one?
I'm going to fall on my sword here and go, look, I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it. It's a fairy tale. It's not a real depiction of what happened. So I think a lot of people made a lot of mileage out of the making it contentious, but the whole film is a fairy tale. It's an alternative version. So
anyone else?
Seen it, so I'm not going to comment.
I haven't watched it yet, but even myself, I haven't got around to watching it.
Yeah, it's funny because yes, go on.
Can I raise a question? Hello there, everybody.
Yes, Tony.
What I liked about Kung Fu films was the kind of style of the way that the stories used to be told, particularly in the 60s and 70s, probably up to the early 80s, where, you know, it's based on that kind of grief, revenge, and a kind of, one for a better word, character, a low character gets built up with, you know, strengths from the master, and then the master dies, and then they've got to kind of defend the town or the family or the honor of whatever. And that was a kind of stereotype kind of story for my emergence of Kung Fu films, of watching characters who would learn from the so-called master. So I just wanted to just raise that, but also I wanted to ask the panel something around what you think the relationship is to why some martial arts characters chose particular insects or animals as their art form. For example, mantis, tiger, you know, that kind of style.
Mantis was my favorite. Anyway, Warriors 2, the mantis. Oh,
yeah, it's funny because I think a lot of people just don't realize that these styles were originally existed already. You know, they weren't, how do I say this? They weren't created for film. They were already there. You know, Southern Mantis is Lau Ka-leung style, inherited from, you know, I'm starting to go very historical now, but, you know, it's an inherited style that comes down from Huo Yanjia. I'm going to say the Mandarin name instead of the Cantonese name, because I think people will know that, you know, which is Jet Li's character from Fearless. So the Mantis was there. I think in terms of like the taking on the characters taking on the animal skills, I think they just went with what they thought was entertaining and interesting.
Yeah, can I just jump in there? When I was researching for my book, and I wrote about Lau Ka-leung, who's one of my favourite choreographers and directors. And there's a great quote where he said he just wanted, because of course he's got this amazing and authentic Kung Fu martial arts background. But when it came to filmmaking, there's a great quote where he said, I just wanted to aestheticize Kung Fu or fist fighting. And I think that he does that incredibly well. So he takes this authentic martial artistry, but then he chooses, and as an ex-choreographer, somebody who does not know about martial arts but knows a bit about choreography, I can see he's chosen these incredible shapes for what they say about character and theme and their ability to entertain. It's incredibly good choreography. So his ability to choose those different styles in animals or insects and match them to a character and a character's energy and dynamics, and then make something out of it is absolutely amazing. So I think I'm picking up on your point, Weng, that it's this incredible aesthetic choice that he was able to make, or, you know, other choreographers were able to make.
Yeah, I think so. And there's, you know, so many examples. I think Sammo Hung used the monkey style in Close Encounters as a spooky kind as well. It's one of my favorite films as well. It's amazingly choreographed final scene when they have the ring and stuff too. You know, so because let's not forget, the animal styles are based in reality. You know, they all come, you know, a lot of the Shaolin monks, they would study animals too, as well, which I remember too. You know, studied the movements of animals. And you watch a lot of films that do the same thing as well. They actually have the animals in the film and like moving around, and then the hero looks at them and thinks, oh, that's an interesting way of moving. Yeah, there's quite a few films with that as well. Scorpion King, is it one of them? Scorpion King. One of the Last Hero in China, Jet Li sees a chicken running around and then thinks, oh, that's interesting. He sees the chicken beat a centipede, was it, in the film?
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of a very random example, but yeah, there's a lot of examples of the animals being used in the films. I guess in the Western culture that would be seen as really weird, whereas in the Eastern culture that's really normal.
Well, I don't know.
What about alcohol abuse? So
drunken master.
Drunken master.
Alcohol abuse. He was using it was an aid to his skills. You know, I mean, he needed it.
It's his spinach.
Yeah, because we used to love doing drunken style. We used to love doing, but we didn't actually take any drink. We just did drunken style. So I don't think it contributed to anyone turning into alcoholics.
It's a cool style though. So it's, you know, it's a very famous sort of historical style. I mean, it's such an interesting way of moving the drunken fist, I guess. You know,
go on.
Yeah, go on.
No, I was going to say, it's obviously for me, like obviously, and what I learned, because I've studied quite a lot, and like what you're saying, I've studied Shaolin, and obviously to me, that's where a lot of the animal styles come from. I mean, what do you expect if they're sitting there all day? You know, they've done training. What else is there to do after that? But watch the insects and things like that, and invent new styles. But yeah, it was. I mean, we loved all that, all the different styles. It just added variety to the whole thing, and they weren't all trying to do the same thing. And obviously, it just shows different types of martial arts that came from the different regions of China, where they had different types of fighting styles. And it's the same, you know, like we used to love watching the Wu-Tang versus what the other one. Wu-Tang versus Shaolin or whatever, the different types of, you know, martial arts and things like that. We used to be really into that and trying to understand it, learn about it, not just watch the films, but then go and read up about it and learn all about the different styles or all that kind of stuff. That was very fascinating for us, you know.
Yeah, and I think we always talk martial arts. You know, everyone talks about Chinese martial arts, but there is martial arts all over the world, and they're all like interesting styles in their own way too. I mean, there's a debate raging about Tarantino now in the chat, which is good, I guess, because, you know, from my personal perspective as an Asian is I despise Tarantino. Like, I think he's one of the most overrated filmmakers of this generation. And it's because, and I'm going to explain why, and it's because he basically took so many ideas from Asian cinema and made them palatable for Hollywood. And I despise that.
I have more of a problem with Kill Bill than I do with...
Yeah, I hate Kill Bill.
Yeah. Same.
I hate it.
I do too.
I think it's his worst
really
films, even though people like, really rate it.
Yeah, exactly. Because for me, it's the clearest like sign of cultural
even though
you can ever find.
Gordon Lowe's in there, you know.
Yes.
I mean, it's great to be as two characters, but that doesn't make up for 2 volumes of it.
Yeah, because it's the thing is he just took all his favorite fight scenes and just reshot them.
Yeah.
I mean, why didn't you do something that was more interesting with them?
Yeah.
You know, because if you want to pay, there's a difference between copying and paying homage to.
Yeah.
You know, The Matrix pays homage to, but Tarantino copied, and that's the bit I don't like about him.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Weng. I came to Kill Bill shortly after I sort of started discovering kung fu movies or martial arts movies in a very big way. And I had a lot of friends who did not watch those movies, but had seen Kill Bill, and they said to me, "You have to watch it. You'll love it. You'll really love it." And when I went to see it, I thought it cheapened the films. It didn't pay homage to them. It kind of exploited them somehow. I found it crude, whereas I found the originals quite amazing and rich and inventive. But I found his film very reductive and crude.
Yeah.
He peaked at Jackie Brown. It was all downhill from there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying he didn't make some great films, because he did make some great films. You know, I love Pulp Fiction. You know,
that one's good.
And the earlier films that he made, but it's definitely really problematic for me. You know, I know that Andrew said about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood being a fantasy as well, but that depiction of Bruce Lee, I know for Asians especially, there's been so much emasculation of Asian men in the media and Western media that it's another nail in the coffin for us. To see that. So it's really disappointing to see it that way, and it's really upsetting because he's our hero, you know, he's our icon, you know, for especially for me, you know. I talked about this in another podcast when I listened to it, but my father knew Bruce Lee, you know, and grew up with him. So You know, he's one of the greatest icons for Asians in the world. So to cheapen him so like that was really upsetting for a lot of Asians. You know, and I do get your point about, I'm not taking anything away from your point, but it was really disappointing to see it that way because, you know, because let's be real here, like Bruce Lee would have killed all of them if they had a one-on-one. So
yeah, I said this in the chat, but I think every representation carries a certain weight, and I think it has to be considered that way. You know, you have a certain responsibility, especially Tarantino, the kind of reach he has with his films. You know, so
yeah, especially because he's such a popular filmmaker, and it's funny because everyone I know who's a minority doesn't like him. Most of the people I know, not everyone, but a lot of the people I know who are minorities don't like Tarantino for his depiction of characters generally, or how he's
using the N word is very problematic. Spike Lee had a big argument sort of with Tarantino about the way his use of the N word in his films. Obviously, led by Mr. Samuel Jackson. Yeah, so I mean, I like Tarantino. I haven't. You guys are making me want to go and watch the film now. So I've seen the arguments online, but I just haven't had time to get around to sort of watching the film. I have seen all the arguments. I'm aware of it. But, I mean, Bruce, I don't think anyone can actually cheapen. I don't think, and to me, in my eyes, no one can do anything to belittle Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee's a legend. It's set in stone. It's set in stone, as far as I'm concerned. Anyone who's trying to do that, I think they're doomed to fail, as far as I'm concerned. You know, maybe the younger generation, maybe I'm speaking as an older head, and the younger generation do not have that same understanding what I have. But Bruce Lee, you know, is up there with Muhammad Ali, with icons, especially within in you know, the black community I come from. Nothing could be changed that. Nothing can change that.
Yeah, no, I definitely accept that as well. You know, it is because he's such a legendary figure. It's hard to take him down almost because he's so legendary, which definitely is true. I think let's do one more and then we'll wrap this up. I think let's see if we can take one more question because we've gone on quite long now. So if anyone has any more questions, they can drop it in now. It's your last chance before we wrap this up.
I have a question if I can ask.
Go ahead, Cash. Go ahead.
It's about. I mean, I was complaining about VHS a little earlier on, but to speak about VHS, a lot of really classic martial arts films that we love and enjoy now only exist as those VHS generation copies. There's no original language version. There's no remastered version. There's no widescreen version. And we don't know, it's unlikely that we'll ever get a better version of those films. I mean, I think that's quite tragic. I was just saying, how the panel feel about certain of our classic films from our Discovery era being lost this way?
Andrew?
I mean, it's not even. I mean, it's not just films that are only available on VHS as well. I think there's a lot of films where the rights are, and you know, Weng and Marlon, you probably come into this as well. The rights are held by a company that doesn't even deal with film distribution anymore. Or,
yeah, you can't find them.
You know, that there might be some decent versions, but you know, in terms of, you know, this stuff is falling through the gaps definitely. And then you've got other companies who do have big libraries, but they, you know, like, I don't know about you, Marlon, but I know, you know, the stuff that we worked on with Weng, you know, you want to put these films on all the time. You know, you'd love to kind of set up a regular film club, but the people who have good versions of them want a lot of money to play them, and as the years have gone on, are less and less likely to be able to haggle them down. So, you know, it's a shame because I think in the old days you could probably be a little bit less legit with putting some of these screenings on back in the 80s and 70s and 80s, but now this stuff is getting really difficult to actually get and put out there, and you know, and into a point where you can actually make the money that you spent getting the screening rights for it.
Yeah, no, I can definitely rate to that as a film festival director. But okay, well, I think we should wrap things up here. Just a couple of things to finish. For Joyce, by the way, there are companies that are releasing iconic Asian films. Arrow, Eureka, and 88 especially have done an amazing job in the last few years of releasing restored classics in 2K and so forth. So just to finish, if you want to follow any of our panelists, you can find them on Twitter, all of them. Josh, yours is? You're still on mute.
He's on mute.
Sorry, I can't actually remember my Twitter handle. Hold on, let me just find it.
Well, if you search for Josh Toussaint-Strauss, or you can find it on the Finding Spirit Film Festival Twitter as well. Meredith, Meredith is...
I'm Foo Thoughts, but I just put it in chat. So FUTHOUGHTS.
Yeah, good idea.
Andrew.
Eastern Kicks.
And
you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest.
Marlon. Kush, Kush, Kush Films Online. And it's nothing to do with smoking weed. It's
amazing. So don't forget to follow Fighting Spirit Film Festival if you want information on future seminars. I know there's some media people in here, so if you want to do any collaborations, I know there's a couple of podcast people that have jumped in as well to follow the debate. And I thank you all for coming as well. Then please drop a message to the Fighting Spirit Film Festival, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. All the sources you can find us. Thank you to the panel, all of you, for joining. I think it's been a really interesting discussion. It went on far longer than I expected, but it was good. Hopefully, and everyone stayed. Yeah, everyone stayed. So that was the good thing. No one left early. So it was an interesting discussion in the end. Hopefully we'll see you all soon. For China Visual Festival and Fighting Spirit Film Festival, we're still trying to figure out when we can do screenings. I know, Andrew, you're having the same issue right now. Hopefully we'll be able to do some screenings soon. But as you know, a lot depends on the government and COVID situation right now. Thanks everyone for attending, and hope to see you next time.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you. And Weng, thanks for facilitating and organising. You've been awesome.
Thanks, Weng.
Yeah, thanks.
Really enjoyed.
Thank you, Weng, as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining. And good afternoon, everybody. Goodbye.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.